Good morning. Picture a hot, humid afternoon in Ho Chi Minh City. I'm in a room with a group of 19-year-old startup founders. We've given them everything you can imagine: access to a $10 million seed fund, the latest technology, and a shiny runway for the ideas. One team develops a brilliant app concept. Everyone's wowed, and they get down to development. But 400 man-hours later, they're stuck, spiraling, deadlines missed, morale in the basement. The team leader looks at me and says, "Veejay, we just don't know how to land this project." Right there, it struck me. We have built this runway for Gen Zs, but they don't know how to land. We have given them a state-of-the-art aircraft, but they don't know how to touch down safely. Sounds absurd, but this is happening in our classrooms and workplaces every single day. Since 2017, I have mentored more than 423 Gen Zs, and I've observed one pattern. I call them the idea generation. Idea rich, but so often execution poor. They can take off like a rocket, but struggle with the descent. Now, data backs this. Nearly 40% of Gen Zs say they plan to quit their job within 2 years. Now, this is not laziness. It is what I call a purpose gap and a clarity deficit. Gen Zs have big dreams, but they enter a world with fuzzy instructions and work that is disconnected from anything meaningful. But we also have to acknowledge that they are navigating one of the most difficult economic headwinds and face a cost of living that make milestones like home ownership feel like a fantasy. So when Gen Zs demand more of a job, be it purpose, be it clarity, or be it growth, it's not entitlement. It's just a natural response to a world they experience as deeply unstable. But here's the paradox. Gen Zs are the most resourceful generation of our time. Nearly half of them say they get better career advice from ChatGPT than their line manager. Think about that. They trust an algorithm more than their boss. This is not because they are disconnected. This is because we have not shown them how to persevere when the Wi-Fi of life cuts out. Which brings me to a story. Earlier this year in March, I worked with a private education institution in Europe to develop a business simulation lab for their final year students. We gave them all the ambitious titles that they dreamed of. So for 5 days, they led a company as CEO, CFO, COO, and whatnot fancy titles you can think of these days. They faced every curveball we threw at them. Market crashes, supply chain disruptions, employee turnover, none of which you could find answers in textbook. It was real. It was messy. They stumbled. They fought. They regrouped. They face the consequences of each and every decision real time, thanks to AI. After 5 days, they emerge exhausted. One student shared with me, I did not know it was this hard to lead a company. Exactly. This is where their creative ideas met the brick wall of reality, but in a safe place where it was okay to fail. So, how did we get here? We have to look ourselves in the mirror, especially my generation, Gen X. It's easy to label the kids, but who raised them? We did. We did it with best intentions. We wanted them to have opportunities that we did not have. So we built the safety nets. We created the soft landings. And the result? They entered a world where the reality of life was far different from what we prepared them for. Now, this is not some grand scheme of work-life harmony. This is about helping Gen Zs find their purpose. Because once you find your purpose, you find your own harmony. You find your own balance. That's a fact. So, what can we do? Well, there are 3 things I've seen when implemented have been powerful. Number 1 is simulation. Pilots train in simulators, right? We need to do the same with Gen Zs. So the story I shared about the business simulation lab alludes to this. Second is clarity-led questioning. And third is the reverse interviews. Which brings me to another story. I do not embrace exit interviews for employees. Since 2018, I've adopted entrance interviews in my hiring practice, particularly when I hire Gen Z management interns. I let the young talent interview me. It's a very powerful tool, personally, for me. They ask my why behind the decisions I've made, which turns into a very nice conversation and dialogue. And then I flip the question and I ask the Gen Z, what in my response is unclear to you? Or do you have any other clarifying questions? Their questions tell me everything about their attitude and character. At the end of the day, I don't hire the best and smartest on paper. I hire the best co-pilot for the job. The one who is willing to learn, the one who has the courage to take risk, and the one who has the ability to think larger than themselves. So, simulation, clarity-led questioning, and reverse interviews are your flight manual. They help build the muscle memory for execution. Now, when we get this right, the payoffs are rather huge. First, we address the Gen Z turnover problem. Some reports say this is as high as 60%. So when you train Gen Zs how to land, they don't bail out. They actually level up. Think about the innovation that you unlock. Gen Zs are the most globally connected, entrepreneurial, and socially aware generation of our time. Think when their creative digital ideas are guided by seasoned experience, you would solve problems that you never knew you had. But the real magic is in the culture that emerges. Imagine a 25-year-old Gen Z reverse mentoring a 55-year-old CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, on the latest AI technology that will revolutionize the work process. And in return, the CMO coaches the young talent how to navigate a tough client negotiation. That is not generational clash or divide. That is building competitive advantage for sustainable high performance. Now, let's go back to the cockpit in Ho Chi Minh where I began. We stepped in. We gave the young team some landing lessons. We encouraged them to ask every single stupid question. They did not quit. A month later, they delivered their prototype. It was rough, but it was real. And it was good enough for them to land their pilot customer and secure $150,000 in pre-seed funding to keep going. They learned how to land. My call to action for you is very simple. If you're a leader, or a manager, or a teacher, be the flight instructor, not the air traffic controller. Don't just clear the runway and say, you're good to go. Step into the cockpit and stand beside them. And if you're Gen Z, don't fly solo in silence. If you're lost in the fog, don't hope to find the runway. Send out the signal. Mayday, mayday. Ask for help. Ask the scary questions. That way, you learn how to land on your own the next time. We have a choice. We can continue to blame those kids for crashing, or we can admit we gave them a supersonic aircraft without the flight manual. I say we take responsibility. We built the runway for them. Now let's get into the cockpit and teach them how to land. Because when they do, they will soar to heights you've never imagined. We have to get this right. Because one day, not too far away, we will all be passengers on that plane that they pilot. With that thought, I thank you.